Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this panel discussion titled From Gaps to Gains, Scaling Global Cyber Capability Development Through Collective Action. Moderated by Ramia Farraj, Senior Presenter and Producer, Forbes Middle East. Our panelists are Chris Gibson, CEO, Executive Director, Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams, FIRST. Professor William H. Dutton, Oxford Martin Fellow, Global Cybersecurity Capacity Center, University of Oxford. Ahmed AlMalki, Chief Information Security Officer, SABIC.
Please اتفضلوا. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this very important session. Today's panel is going to explore how uneven cyber capabilities create risks and how collaboration across governments, industry, academia, and responders can really transform these risks into resilience. And we're so fortunate to be joined by this esteemed group of panelists. Let's start first by identifying where the challenges are. Mr. AlMalki, from your vantage point in a global company, what are the most pressing cybersecurity capability gaps across petrochemicals industries and critical infrastructure?
Thank you for the questions. I'm so happy to be here in this panel, in this distinguished forum. Basically, petrochemical sector is intertwined with the critical infrastructures, and the risk or gaps could be starting from single risk and SCADA system all the way to be blackout or supply chain meltdown. Most of the challenge that is we have today in the sectors is about the operating technology. Operation technology is built for the plant for the last 20, 30 years. And those outdated systems really required investment a lot to keep it up to date. This is basically also, if you look to the IT-OT convergence and how we can running this in a very hybrid environment that running IT and OT. The challenge that we have today also is about the skill set and the gaps that we have in the operation technologies. Most of them is the technologies require the talent to run it, to use it. And if you talk today about IT and OT, they are speaking to a different language. Because you need people that they knows how the plant is working, and in the way that is the operation technology designed for reliability of the plant, not to face cyber foes. These are the things that even the risk management today and vulnerabilities, basically it is built with IT models, not fit for the OT. I think the part also for the supply chains and third parties, this is one of the things that is most of the hardware that's been supplied to the OT, it has a lot of backdoors because due to the missing update that has been in certain PLCs and sensors. I think most of the solution that we need to focus on the futures is about looking at IoT cloud integration that will gonna solve a lot of challenge that we have it today. But the challenge that we need to invest maybe double than what used to do in corporate and IT network compared to what we need to do in OT. This is required collaboration even to overcome.
So we need more investment, and the infrastructure needs to be updated, and there's a skills gap. These are huge challenges. And Mr. Gibson, when teams respond to international cyber incidents that could perhaps happen as a consequence of these gaps, which gaps stand out the most in slowing down response?
So again, I'd like to join my colleagues. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a true honor to be here. It's a great pleasure. I've been in Saudi Arabia for over the last 40 years, and I love coming back. I can think of a number, so I'll reduce it to 2 or 3. I think the primary one we see would be legal and jurisdictional. As you face an incident in one country, how can I ask for action to be taken in another country that will meet their laws, if they have reason, a due process to go through to take a website down or to make a change or to arrest someone, how do I do that? So those legal and jurisdictional issues are really challenging. Especially as this is quite new. There are still a number of countries that don't have cybersecurity frameworks and cybersecurity laws, so they can sort of hide behind you can't do anything to me because I'm not breaking the law in the country that I'm doing this in. So that can be really challenging. Jurisdictional then is another one. Who's actually taking the lead within a country? Is it the police? Is it some kind of the intelligence agency? Is it national security? How does that all work? How do you work your way through those corridors to get to the result that you need to do, which is essentially, stop this happening and move forward? I think the second challenge, and we've talked about this many times in these events, is cyber skills and capacity. We're chronically short of cyber skills, especially in the developing world, in countries, for instance, in Africa, where significant enhancements in computer bandwidths, very clever, very smart people, but not, some of those are using that for bad objectives, so they can do things that we wouldn't have dreamt they could have done 10, 15, 20 years ago, and there is not the capacity in there to fix that. My organization is a forum. The clue is in the name. We bring security teams and response teams together. We have about 20 members in Africa of the 54 countries. So we clearly need to increase that capability such that I can call, my message is I can know someone in that country, I can call them, I can get stuff done very quickly rather than going through the very slow legal process. Mm-hmm. So those would probably be my top 2. I can go on, but I'll stop there.
Okay. I don't know if we need to hear any more. At this point, but I'm sure you will elaborate later on in the conversation. And Professor Dutton, I would like to hear your ideas as well on this. Based on your data and your studies, which sectors or regions are lagging most in cyber capacity building? Is it in fact the continent of Africa, like we just heard from Mr. Gibson?
Okay. Well, at the University of Oxford, I've been working with a group that we do studies of the capacity of nations, the cybersecurity maturity of different nations around the world. And so from our evidence, I could build on a couple of things Chris has said. By the way, we talk to people like Chris. These gentlemen and others, that's how we understand what people are doing and what they're experiencing in different countries and so forth. On the skills gap, one of the obvious things is that because of the speed at which innovation is happening in putting computers in the hands of individuals over billions of people around the world rapidly, the skills and also awareness of cybersecurity risk among end users is a clear gap, and that one that everyone's trying to figure out how to address. How do you create the awareness, relevant skills, and levels of trust? And trust is, of course, one of the most interesting to address, because you can have too much trust, and you trust anything you do online, and this could be a hazard. But also that you don't have enough trust, and then you don't use anything. So you need a learned level of trust. And how do you create this learned level of trust, though you're skeptical about emails you get and you follow correct procedures? But one of the most interesting things as an academic, we are trained to question taken for granted assumptions, and you do assume that regions are a very important factor in the lack of security in some areas and greater security in others. And what we found with our data over close to 100 countries where we've gathered data on their capacity building is that when you control for the size of the country, the scale of the country, and also the wealth of the country, that regions don't really matter. In other words, they don't explain very much. What really explains most of the variance in capacity building, and the consequences of that are related to the scale and wealth of the country. But that doesn't mean regions are not important, because I think regions, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think regions are so critical in networking and sharing experiences, and because that's face-to-face communication is still the way in which most people operate. And going around this conference, I learned two things. WhatsApp and conversations are the big thing. The internet has not ruled out any of those. And so networking and learning and education are critical on a regional basis. But regions don't explain it's wealth and scale. Large countries that are wealthy have more capacity. We also learned in other panels they also have the most attacks.
Yep.
but they are also prepared. They have the capabilities to withstand and recover and expect these kinds of attacks.
Absolutely. I mean, there is so much diversity in regions in terms of cybersecurity, wealth. The MENA region is a perfect example of this. So moving from gaps to lessons, what's worked and what hasn't? Mr. AlMalki, what are the main barriers to private sector collaboration with governments on cybersecurity, and how can these barriers really be overcome?
Yeah, there are certain, I would say, reasons that could slow down the interaction and collaboration between private sectors and government authorities, specifically for a company having a global footprint. The challenge, one of them is basically about regulation or regulatory fragmentation between a region to other regions. I think we see a maturity, and a good example like what we have here in KSA really progressing in that side. Other regions still, they put certain control that is sometimes is a trigger that is like data sharing and liabilities. This is one of the other concerns. Other points is basically about the skill set missing in certain region, specifically for the private sector that's working in energy and petrochemical. How can overcome it? Basically, we have, as I said, a good example here in KSA that we already passed things that behind us today. One of them is the regulation framework that is really tuned in a way that really help the private sectors to protect and have a secured business. The things that we are getting also from the NCA that thankfully for them, honestly, is about the threat monitoring and intelligence. They are advancing in this where they can share with the critical infrastructures what could be threat for the sectors. They have academy that is alliances with the universities and post program that help also to empower the graduates. And most specifically is about women empowerment in cybersecurity. This has helped a lot to raise the percentage in the contribution of women in that. I think these are, we need to see such example in the rest of the region that where we are operated. There are good progress in that in certain region, but still I think it required close collaboration between the authorities and the private sectors.
So there is still room for improvement. And Mr. Gibson, share with us, if you would, a specific incident where global coordination directly accelerated recovery or capability growth. I'm sure you have many examples of this.
Yes. So an interesting one. I think I would hark back to the Maersk hacking or malware incident a few years ago. We all know about this one. Within 7 minutes, 55,000 machines were completely bricked, inoperable, couldn't be turned on, couldn't be used, couldn't be anything. That affected 76 ports globally, 555,000 ships and 7 million containers. So clearly a significant hack. And clearly it was global. The Maersk were a global organization. They were hit by a piece of malware that came out of an auto-update function, which is interesting in itself, and it just spiraled across their network. And back in the days when I started working in sort of national cybersecurity, it was always a hesitancy for companies to help other companies. I can remember when we started bringing some of the food supply chain in the UK, they would literally say, but it's a good thing if they get hacked. They might get a business competitive advantage. And it was only once one or two of them had been hacked that they saw the light. But this, with Maersk, it was really quite different. So Maersk were able to bring in, I think, 180 people from Deloitte. So luckily, they were the only people hit by this malware on this scale. So those 170 people weren't dispersed across multiple companies. They could all come into one. So Deloitte as a company stepped in and said, we're going to help. But so also did Microsoft, so also did various other companies. Within 4 days, they'd shipped in all their experts. Not only that, but Maersk's customers shipped in their experts on the software and the architecture that had caused the problem. So a true example of people coming together globally from all sorts of countries across the world to help Maersk do stuff, coordinated by Maersk. So they were able to sort of do this, to send the right people to the right places. In terms of the way they solved the problem, they were very lucky. They had a machine in Nigeria that had been affected by a power cut. So it wasn't turned on when the malware hit. So at one point, a sort of a 23-year-old IT guy was stuck on a corporate jet and sent from Nigeria to head office with this one remaining, unencrypted, still readable disk to resolve the problem. But I thought it was interesting in the way that, the community came together on this. Everybody helped. Their competitors helped. Their customers helped. They were able to globally coordinate that. It spoke of the building of trust that they'd managed over the years with these people, rather than trying to be insular and we can solve our own problems, because often you can't. So that's what really sold it for me. It was this genuinely this community coming together to do it, coordinated by Maersk, but coming together around the world.
It is really touching, and it's really a clear example of why speed and coordination matter so much in cyber response. And Professor Dutton, tell us about the academic evidence that can help turn lessons from incidents such as this into structured frameworks for policymakers.
Okay, I would say research also matters in academic, but that's always a question. But I've been convinced that we have made a difference. As I said, we've developed some cybersecurity maturity models, and that's based upon talking to people that are practitioners, policymakers, but across governments and nations where we do these studies. And therefore, we can build models which have a variety of dimensions from technology and standards to culture and society about what they might do in order to be able to withstand attacks and recover and so forth. What I think is the best news about that is, instead of people just being afraid of cybersecurity or fearful of using computers, a cybersecurity framework, cybersecurity maturity framework, tells you what to do. I mean, if you take that framework and look at it, it's like any government or a nation can say, these are the kinds of things we should be doing in order to prepare. So you can't prevent attacks. That's why you develop a cybersecurity framework, because they cannot be prevented entirely, but you can prepare for them so you can be resilient and so forth. And therefore, we can tell governments and nations, what should you do to help yourselves in the event that you are attacked. The other thing that we have done is develop some new concepts that I think are useful to people in the cybersecurity community. My own favorite is I've worked with the notion of a cybersecurity mindset, that what we need to develop in terms of end users, but also across the board in government, is a mindset where, instead of looking at a checklist of what I need to do to be safe, you don't have to think about it. This is part of your mindset, just as you lock a bike when you go home on your bicycle. You don't think about
part of your autopilot.
Yes, exactly. So how do we develop a mindset? And we're trying to promote that kind of concept. The resilience, we worked with the World Economic Forum and their report on resilience, and we've debated a lot, what do we mean by resilience? And I think it is, you might think, well, of course I know what resilience means, but actually we argued about that a lot. Yes. And I was, on the way here, I was affected by the airport check-in stop. So the airline I was
That was a few days back.
Yes,
Okay.
A couple of days. Yes, it was long, but lo and behold, sorry, our checkout has gone down, and so they went to paper. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they were able to get us on 30 minutes after we were expected to leave. Mm-hmm. That's resilience.
Yes.
That's resilience. So there's cyber resilience, but resilience is generally, and I think most usefully, talked about as business resilience.
Yes.
Can you carry on doing what you need to do even though you've been taken out and this cyber capability has been taken out in a particular case? And so so that's part of the mindset now. You have to be thinking about not only cybersecurity, but how do you create systems where, oh, well, if this is not available to me and I cannot use this system, I can go to paper, or I can go to a backup computer, and so forth. And so
What's plan B?
Yes, exactly, exactly. And the other is disinformation. We all know what disinformation is, but I mean, we started saying that this is really a cybersecurity issue. It's not just a problem for news agencies and so forth. Because, well, we've all know now that even the AI panels were talking about the concerns they have with the whole supply chain of an AI system. State actors are already beginning to groom AI language models to reflect their narratives, all right? So that means, can you trust them? No. Well, you have to think through, disinformation is not just a matter of something be outside, just because your computing systems work. If you've allowed disinformation to pervade this without people knowing it and so forth, you've undermined the business and you've undermined the government or the society. So disinformation has become very much central to cybersecurity.
Yes. So let's take these lessons and turn them into action. How can international incident response networks really evolve into capability building platforms and not just crisis responders? Mr. Gibson.
So I'll preface everything I say with, you should not be doing this on your own.
Okay.
You should push this down your entire supply chain.
Okay.
Because we all see, and I think we've all heard today and in many conferences, I can defend myself, I can build my perfect castle, but if my supply chain is corrupted, then I have a problem. Yes. So the first thing I would say is build that constant engagement. Do tabletop exercises, run exercises, pretend something's, put your senior leadership team in a room, tell them something bad has happened, and then ask them what their plan is, because they should have a plan. That, if a well-run business will know what it's talking about. And you should phrase this in business terms. So it's not your data center's gone down, your website isn't working, your processes can't run, you can't do this, you can't do this. These are the business processes you can't do. How are you going to fix that? Now, clearly, part of that will be get the resilient systems back up, but resilience should be, as said, it's business resilience, not tech resilience. Yes. So you need the business to be resilient by having multiple ways of doing it, or falling back on paper if that's the best and quickest and easiest way forward. But build that in, do it a lot, learn from it when you do it, throw in different things each time, but push that right down your supply chain. And the other thing is build institutional knowledge and capability. So that when something bad happens, it's not the first time the CEO's been pulled into that room and said, what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. He knows about it because he's practiced it. He's got muscle memory. He's aware that he will have to make decisions that he might not like shut that business down while we focus on that one. Things like that. Do that often, do that frequently, do it and rinse and repeat. That's my big thing.
And what would you say are the metrics or the tools that are most useful in measuring progress in national cyber capability, Professor Dutton?
Well, I would say that a cybersecurity maturity model is very useful. And as I said, it covers hundreds of different indicators of what preparedness and legal and technical and so forth. When I was first doing maturity reviews with the center, I was worried with some countries where we had a low score on something. I thought, oh wow, they're really going to be upset with this. Of course, I'm an academic. I think they're going to be thinking about grades, right? But they said, that's wonderful. I mean, we need investment in this area. This is going to help us. So we can identify gaps in their cybersecurity maturity, and that can help them get investment and help make the case that they need more technology in it, or standards, or what have you. The other part is we've actually used the model, and I've been able to, because we have nearly 100 countries, we can look at the statistical relationship between capacity building and outcomes like problems that users experience and economic development. And we found that even when you control for the wealth of the country, scale of the country, and so forth, which really affect cybersecurity, controlling for those factors, if a country has a higher score on cybersecurity maturity, they do better. They have fewer problems, users, and they have greater economic benefits. So we have real evidence based upon having done these individual analyses that really support the virtue of getting cybersecurity capacity building done in a country.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. AlMalki, I mean, looking ahead, what are the metrics or outcomes that global players like SABIC use to measure the effectiveness of cyber capability investments? Can that be measured?
This is it's not easy to be measured actually, but if you look to the cybersecurity, doesn't visibly actually impact the revenue generation or cost optimization per se. So classical ROI is not applicable in most of the cases. So basically, it's about trust. It's about how we can operate and produce with the confidence. It's about how we can be the right suppliers for your customers. So today, I think the cost that caused by cybersecurity incident, the damage itself, it costs more than the investment that we should do for cybersecurity. The reputation as well. I think today, breach will erode the customers, and definitely we're risking the revenue, the contract that we have. Whatever we invest definitely will be direct and indirect. Today, if the plant goes down, it is a catastrophic, and it has direct and indirect cost. That will take time until recover. These are the things that we look at it today. Even in each business case, we have it with the business. We put the cybersecurity part of the calculation. There are other things about regulation, and when you comply with the regulation in each country that you operated in is a cost avoidance that you will avoid penalties. This and others other operation, like time to detect, time to recover, resilience, that you can help the business in a way that is keep the business running. There are many things that within this, but it is not directly. It has to be taken from the reputation. As you move more to the digital platform, you need to keep the cybersecurity part of this protection.
Okay, we have almost run out of time, but I would like to just hear a final thought from each of you on the single most important step the global community should take to close the cyber capability gap in the next 5 years. Mr. Gibson.
So have a plan. Well, individually, companies should have a plan, but you should help other people build their plan as well. So the capacity building that we do, and many of you do, in countries that don't have the money, help them build that plan, help them build a team, help them have the ability to respond to an incident when it happens.
Professor.
I think the most critical issue is political will within the family or within a government, within a nation. And what we have to do to get that political will behind cybersecurity is somehow change the narrative. We've still stuck on an old narrative of cybersecurity being the guys in this basement that we never see. And what today's world, given the pace of change and with technology in over half the world's population's hands and so forth, that we need to show that it's affecting every sector of society, that the consequences can be devastating for an economy, for lives, and so forth. So if we get a narrative, maybe it's safety. I don't know how we can develop that narrative and get rid of some of the legacy of this cybersecurity legacy. But it's much more important, much broader, with resilience, disinformation, different mindset, and so forth across the world, not just...
It's all-encompassing and international.
Yeah. How do we get that across?
Yes.
If we can get that across, the political will come.
Yes. Mr. AlMalki.
Basically, in a nutshell, it's about cybersecurity ecosystems, where there's a good collaboration between the authorities and the private sectors, considering the skill set gaps that we have today, collaboration about what we could call it center of excellence kind of, and helping in the new technologies that will, like AI driven and post-quantum, etc.
I think the key takeaway is cyber resilience isn't built by tech alone. It's forged through trust, through partnerships, and through shared investments. Thank you for sharing with us all of your insights, esteemed panelists. And we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.